is the Yahoo Sports NBA columnist that everybody pays attention to. His information is pristine. And I'm pleased to have him on the Rich Eisen Show for the first time. He is Adrian Wojnarowski here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Adrian?
Rich, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So let's start with the NBA draft and how you think it's going to play out. I know we don't mock draft. It just, at least because I sometimes get confused, but whether it's a real draft, you know, Adrian. So what do you got for me, you think, at the top of the draft?
Well, I think, Minnesota, I think it's very likely they take Karl Towns from Kentucky. I think he's been really the consensus number one pick since maybe the midpoint of the college season. And I think there's a good chance that the Lakers take Jahlil Okafor from Duke. But D'Angelo Russell from Ohio State is still in the mix with the Lakers at 2. And then I think it gets really interesting with Philly and New York 3 to 4. From there on, I think there's a lot of uncertainty. I think even within the Knicks right now, do they keep their pick and draft there? Do they move back? And then Philly, I think Philly will really be deciding between, Kristaps Porzingis from Latvia, 7'1" player who a lot of executives tell me think may be the most talented guy in this draft. I spent some time with him a couple of weeks ago. Really an impressive guy, and 19 years old, and reminds a lot of people of a young Dirk Nowitzki. Very polished, great disposition, really determined mindset. Comes from a basketball family, and I think the draft gets really interesting in that 3/4 spot with Philly and New York, because I think they're looking at a lot of different options. Even that high up in the draft.
So is there a chance that the Lakers don't go with the big man that the Timberwolves pass on?
Well, the Lakers would love for Minnesota to pass on Karl Towns. The Lakers would love to get Karl Towns. It's unlikely. And if Minnesota decided that they thought Okafor was better, let's just say Minnesota decided we want to take somebody else one, they know everybody else values Karl Towns. They'd be going against the grain. They'd probably do a deal to get something instead of just, make LA jump to number one and give them something, but that's not in the works. That's not happening. I think Minnesota's pretty well locked in there. And, and I think in the end, the Lakers, I think they're leaning toward Okafor, but D'Angelo Russell's been in there twice to work out. This is very much a point guard league now, and there was always a time where you would always say you never draft a small over a big, or in instances where you've got a chance at a great big. The way the league is set up now, and the way the way that the three-point shot has come into it, teams going small. You saw what Golden State did in the finals. People are going to look closer at Russell up high, even over an Okafor. But I still think the lean for the Lakers is toward the big guy.
I've got Adrian Wojnarowski of Yahoo Sports joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. So where does DeMarcus Cousins reside in all of this right now?
Well, I reported last night that George Karl, the Kings coach, has been very determined to trade him. He's been very vocal within the organization, outside of the organization, that he wants to move him, that he doesn't feel like he can get along with him, that he can coach him. They had, a few weeks together at the end of the season after Karl took the job in February, and there's a lot of the owner in Sacramento is very, he's been pretty determined to hold on to Cousins. He's an unbelievable talent. They have him signed for 3 more years, certainly, but I think in the end he's probably. Even if he starts the season in Sacramento, I don't think he's long for there unless, the Kings just fired a coach last spring, not last spring, in December, early in the season. They signed George Karl to a 3-year deal. But Cousins, as my sources indicated, Cousins knows that Karl has been pushing for a trade to get him out of there. That relationship's been described to me as irreparable. It's going to be really interesting how this plays out, how the organization decides to go forward here. I don't think there's going to be a deal here anytime soon, certainly not alongside the draft. But Sacramento has really made it clear to teams around the league that outside of Cousins, everybody else is available. It's a very unsettled organization right now.
Well, I mean, Adrian, I mentioned at the top of the segment that everybody reads you. DeMarcus Cousins appears to be one. I don't know if you saw his tweet that was sent out at 11 o'clock on Monday night Eastern time with a corn, a snake, and a corn for snake in the grass. And I think it's dawned on him that George Karl might be trying to trade him.
Well,
Adrian.
I don't think Cousins needed to read my story to know that. I think, and I report he's known that that's been going on.
Mm-hmm.
Karl has worked to get some players and get some people in his corner to make the case to management and the ownership that that he has support in moving him out. The problem is when you talk to players about it, they just go back to the other player and tell them what's going on. So that sometimes is part of it, but it's going to be a really combustible. It already is combustible, but I think if they have to go back to training camp together, DeMarcus Cousins, as talented as he is and as dominant of a talent as he is, he's also shown that if he's not happy with things, if he wants to act out, he can be very difficult. And so that presents a real challenge for Sacramento if he decides that he doesn't want to play for George Karl. How they figure out a way to proceed together.
Another story that people are talking about, Adrian, is what Phil Jackson told another highly respected writer in the business, and Howard Beck, formerly of the Times, who covered the Knicks for so many years there, now with Bleacher Report, talking about LeBron James and the state of offensive basketball today, saying when I watch some of these playoff games and I look at what's being run out there as what people call an offense, it's really quite remarkable to see how far our game has fallen from a team. And Phil Jackson then said, I watched LeBron James, for example. He might travel every other time he catches the basketball if he's off the ball. He catches the ball, moves both his feet. You see it happen all the time. There's no structure. There's no discipline. There's no how do we play this game type of attitude. I'd love to get your thoughts on that quote, Adrian.
Well, I think you look at Cleveland, the team that they had in the finals. They found a way to playing through LeBron James with a lot of isolation. They had a group around LeBron James that if you took James off and you tried to send them into an NBA regular season, they'd struggle to score 80 points a night. They'd probably struggle to win 25 games in an NBA season. So the idea that you were going to get great ball movement and you were going to play through in an NBA final against a very loaded, talented Golden State team, who, by the way, move the ball, who people have, they're a delight for people to watch. I think David Blatt did what he had to do in Cleveland to adjust to all the personnel losses they have and play through the best player in the world, and got to a Game 6. When you win 17 games in New York, your focus probably should be on rebuilding that team. People certainly talked about Michael Jordan for a very long time, that he'd get away with travels, and it's great that Phil wants to fix the state of the league. He probably should worry about the $12 million a year he's getting paid to try to fix New York.
Yeah, my first thought, Adrian, was without Love and Kyrie, what's he supposed to do? Throw it to the wide open Knicks that Phil got the Cavs to take just to watch them clang it off the iron? I mean, what else is he supposed to do?
Listen, when I'm sure David Blatt getting to Game 6 of the NBA Finals with that group, whatever criticism you want to throw his way, I'm sure he's happy to take it, and would probably not want to switch places with anybody else out there. But Phil's always had strong opinions, and that's part of the thing with Phil. But I think now he's being judged a little differently, and how he's going to build, and his ability here to show he can build an organization and build a team. And in the end, people are going to get back to that issue with him and see what he does this week, see what he does in free agency, and see if the Knicks can come out of this summer in better shape. I know Phil's taking bows and he wanted some Executive of the Year votes for what he did in the regular season. He gave away, Iman Shumpert and J.R. Smith, essentially for a second-round pick. He did a deal with Dallas that he got virtually no value for with Tyson Chandler. He probably had one of the worst years of any executive in the league, and if he's taking bows for that, he might want to re-examine how he's approaching this job.
I'm here with Adrian Wojnarowski of Yahoo. Before I let you go, what surprises do you think are currently forming in the draft ether for Thursday night trades or anything of that nature?
Well, I think there's going to be, I sense a lot of conversation, more than usual, leading into the draft. I think there's a potential for a lot of teams. It's a good draft. Like GMs will tell you, through like number 18, 20, you have a chance to get a pretty good player. But I sense people executives really differ on, guys they like. People love a certain guy, others don't like him. So what I think you're going to see is teams jumping up to get to a certain spot in the, in that sort of like 6 to 12 range, and then teams there who don't love what's there want to move back. I think there'll be deals here right into draft night. Teams trying to jockey and move around. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of that on Thursday night. That usually makes for a fun draft.
But look out for the Latvian guy. That's what you're saying.
Exactly.
Okay. Thanks for calling in, Adrian. I appreciate it.
Okay, Rich. Take care. Talk to you.
You bet. That's Adrian Wojnarowski.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.